Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Everything Bagel. I'm Alex Kahaya, joined by my co-host Bidon Roy, founder of Bagel. Today, we're going to talk about AI's evolutions towards superintelligence, examining open source's role and the potential for AI to surpass human control. Um, I think this is really timely because I actually was just listening to Joe Rogan's podcast this morning with Mark Zuckerberg. And it was interesting because the last time you and I talked, we were talking about how Meta really is the only one that I know of that's really invested in truly open source AI. And it's funny, like Joe didn't even ask him like why did you do that? But he just sort of talked about it. It was exactly the same reasons you and I talked about why open source AI is super important. One of the things he brought up is like, if we get to AGI or artificial superintelligence and it's only in the hands of one country or entity, like how bad is that for the world?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I just thought I'd bring that up as a point before we start talking about like where are we, in this process of getting to that point. But I just found it really interesting.
I totally agree with the part that Zuckerberg made. And like the closest thing to AGI or ASI, by the way, like let me just clear that up. What do those
Yeah.
mean? AGI is artificial general intelligence. So usually by that, what people mean is that an AI, which is an human level intelligent at most things, right? So if you're talking about physics, that AI is as intelligent as a very well versed physics PhD, let's say. Or if you're talking about cryptography, then that AI is as well versed as the top PhD students in top universities who are studying cryptography for decades. So that's AGI. And what's ASI? ASI stands for artificial superintelligence, and that means is that it's basically God level intelligence.
Yeah.
It's way more intelligent than any human being that ever existed on this planet. It's probably more intelligent than a lot of people combined. If you kind of combine their IQ, and it will probably be able to solve problems which thousands of top minds in the world of that specific subject were not able to solve over the years. So that's ASI. And when we think about it, like how much power it has, and it's like unfathomable. It can do anything, right? Like the closest to something we can grab is like the idea of God. It's like it knows everything, it understands everything, it can do anything it wants to. That's where we are heading. We are on the verge of creating ASI. And imagine if we create an ASI that's owned by one company. Like that's basically a god owned by one company. They can do whatever they want with it. Like the ASI system can figure out how to break the cryptography of Bitcoin and basically get all the funds to convert it through their wallet and whatnot. Right? That's like one catastrophic scenario. How we stop it? We allow everyone to get access to this AGI and ASI. And the only way that's possible is by making open source AI.
So, I mean, the thinking is like if everybody has access to it, then, okay, someone can try to break Bitcoin with it and some other person can try to use it to save Bitcoin. And so, it's like a level playing field or like why, like how does everyone having access to ASI lead to or prevent the malicious actors? I mean, it doesn't really prevent them, right? It just means that the good guys and the bad guys both have it.
Both are equally powered.
Yeah.
So if the bad guys have it, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, that's what we know. I think Napoleon said that, right? Or whoever it is.
Yeah, I think so.
That if someone has ASI, yeah, if someone has ASI, they're definitely going to corrupt. And we all need access to that so that we can counteract in different ways. At this point, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. There's no way of stopping it. The only way we can make sure that the bad things are not going to happen and the society and civilization actually survives through it is that we give everyone access to it. And only possible way to do
Back up
that
a
is
little bit
open
though,
source.
because like, okay, so Mark Zuckerberg was saying he thinks, like this year, they're basically at Meta going to have mid-level engineers are just all AI. And he doesn't think that he's going to be getting rid of like his engineering team. He's going to actually like just have them like augment with people. So like and then you've got OpenAI, right? So and Sam Altman saying this year they're going to get AGI. So what makes you think that we're going to get to ASI? Because this is the first time I've heard somebody make that's like that we're that close. Like how close are we?
Mhm.
And what makes you think that we're that close? I'm just curious.
So at the end of the day, all of this are guesswork, right? We don't know what's gonna happen. Like I think I talked about this before. Like if you go and ask Sam Altman, "Hey, what's gonna happen in AI within the next 5 years?" He says, "I don't know." And I know that because I actually asked him in person when I met him. But a lot of people kind of say like they know definitely, and that's not true. But how I think it will be accelerated is that this year we will have AGI, right? And that will help all the human being working on the problem of making AI more intelligent faster because it will be augmented by this super intelligent AI system. They're writing codes, they'll be faster. They're doing research, they'll be faster. They're trying to solve a math equation, which usually takes a couple of weeks. They'll be able to do it in 2 minutes. It's just faster. So if you thought something was going to happen within 10 years after AGI, that's going to happen, but it's going to happen within 1 year instead of 10. We will 10x the speed of evolution of all the industries and technologies that we have.
So, I mean, for AGI, all right. So where or step one is get AGI. Where is
Yeah.
open source AGI going to come from? Because it's not coming from Sam Altman. And actually, this is back up a minute. Can you just quickly tell me you actually met Sam Altman? Like, well, what's the story there?
So I was at an event, like in San Francisco, there are so many AI events, and it's crazy because at some of those events, you just randomly meet people
Yeah.
like that, like Sam Altman or, Sergey Brin, like the founder of Google. Like I also met him at a random event. So San Francisco is kind of that kind of place where if you're going to the right events and getting invited to the right events, you just meet people like that. Like they just happen to be sitting beside you kind of thing. Right. So that's the interesting thing about San Francisco. I feel like it's kind of same in LA, but for entertainment industry. Like if you're in the right kind of circle, you go to the parties and you meet celebrities and whatnot. Same for San Francisco, but for tech. So that's how I met him.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of early days when I first started in crypto, just like at every conference, you just walk up to people who are the founders of these protocols that are now billionaires. And it's pretty easy to talk to people if you just do it,
At the right.
Yeah, just at the right place, the right time, and then say hi and try to have a conversation. Okay. And so back to my other question, which is open source AI and AGI. Like it's not coming from Sam Altman. I don't think Grok is open source or going to be open source. So where's the open source AGI going to come from that then people are going to be able to use to get to ASI, to augment?
I think the open source AGI is gonna come from the open source community, like the community that has been working for it the whole time.
Yeah,
Right.
but is it Llama? I mean, is it going to be a Llama 3 or Llama 4 like model that leads to AGI and from Meta, or are there other like projects that you know of that could potentially lead to that, or is that one like the most developed? I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, yeah, I think it'll come from
Hmm.
that community, but like which project or team that's like that of that's working on that, that would be the open source competitor.
So the open source competitor to Meta are Mistral, for example. It's a French company. They have been doing well, although they are kind of lagging behind recently. And there's another company from China who recently made a lot of noise because they were able to build a model with very few GPUs. But the model was state of the art, as in it was comparable to the llamas,
Mhm.
which took like
I read
hundreds of
about that.
thousands of clusters of GPUs. The name of the company is called DeepSeek, and the name of the model is called also DeepSeek. And the version 3 that they released was amazing. That kind of blew a lot of the benchmarks out of the park, right? So it was so good. And the crazy thing is, they just apparently spent $5 million to train that model. And a
Wow.
year ago, to train a model of that capability, you would have needed 500 million, for example. So we are already seeing all of this, like the technology and the innovation being sped up. We are just witnessing it in real time.
I mean, that it sounds what I'm hearing is there's maybe 2, 3 teams that have a chance, right, of building the open source model that achieves AGI in the next year, 2 years, right?
I'm honestly, so I don't think three teams have a chance who might be willing to open source it
Mm.
if they have it. OpenAI is definitely the front runner at this. But do I think are they going to open source it? I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
Meta is more likely to open source it. Or DeepSeek is more likely to open source it. Or Mistral is more likely to open source it if they have it, this open source AGI. But at the end of the day, I believe is that even if Meta has AGI, a model, I don't think they're going to open source it to the public because the sheer amount of power they get by just keeping it and using it for their products and driving their revenue. Why would they want to give it away to their competitors? Like Meta's competitor, who are their competitor? Like in social media, they're like,
Well, I don't know.
they're
I just have to go at what Mark Zuckerberg said. I mean, he said it on the it's at the very end of Joe Rogan's like episode with him, but
yeah.
he seemed pretty adamant that it was important that their AI efforts are open source, like that their models are open source.
Mhm.
So we'll see. But it sounds like monetizable open source AI could be the thing that accelerates that, and maybe that like when you think about a community, an open source community, right, and then
Mhm.
you throw an economic engine in there and a mission, like a vision and a mission that like the whole community wants to get after, I think it's
Yeah.
possible, right? It's this drumbeat of like, can we achieve AGI from an open source community? I mean, and maybe that's the drumbeat that Bagel needs to start banging on, like put a stake in the ground, like the community is
Yeah.
going to make AGI, and people will use it, right? I think this is the cool thing is like the revenue model there is there for everyone to contribute to and earn money
Mhm.
from, which just didn't exist before. And so now you don't run into this question that you were just saying, like, why would we do this when we can just like when we run a centralized company that needs to earn money? Like
Yeah.
these issues don't exist.
Yeah, true. I mean, as I said, like only other way to actually enable this open AGI to happen within the open source community and not wait for some company to do it and like wait for them to open source it. Even though Zuckerberg said like he will do it, we'll see if he does it because he had kind of conflicting statements in other interviews before. So the only way we can enable the community to come up with open source AGI is that we help them to monetize their contribution. So they can own their contribution and they can monetize it. And that's how we get the resource flow going. They can contribute whatever resources to a model, then they earn revenue through that, and they have money to reinvest for even more compute and more data, and they can earn revenue and all of those things, right? So that's how all of this would work. If we just ask the open source community, like, hey, go find your compute, go find your data, clean the data, make sure the pipeline is totally okay and robust, and then make an open source model, where are they gonna get the money from? They're not like Meta, who has hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue. They need a revenue source first. That's what Meta did. They figured out the revenue source first. Then they are able to get the state-of-the-art open source models. Same with OpenAI. They got the revenue sourced first, like they're getting money from ChatGPT, even though they're also raising like billions of dollars. The open source community don't have the resources. So you have to get the value flow going where
Well,
they
you
earn the
you guys
money.
have contributed significantly via your partnerships, though. Like the Filecoin partnership is not insignificant. There's access to, I mean, millions of dollars in GPU compute, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, like that's just the first step. Like we give them access, but at the end of the day, we cannot subsidize it for them. We're a startup as well. Like we cannot, like the Filecoin miners are providing GPUs to the Bagel's bakery platform for developers to use. But at the end of the day, they need money to buy their GPUs and run them, right? They're not going to do a charity. And same for us. Like we cannot subsidize it forever for developers. What we do
So how,
for developers to use these GPU resources and monetize their contribution, then they have more money to buy more GPUs from the miners of Filecoin ecosystem.
how do you see the flywheel starting in this like open source community evolving in the Bagel ecosystem to achieve this goal? Like, let's say hypothetically, after this podcast, you're like, AGI is the stake in the ground for Bagel Network, where the community is going to build it. Like, how does something like that actually happen? I'm just brainstorming, like, in the context of you've built the monetization platform that's there, right? So how do we get there?
We have to reach a critical mass in terms of the developers who are kind of um, motivated by the mission. So that's first. Like we need a lot of developers to come together and work off of each other's work. How do we get there? Like one way to kickstart it really quickly is that in crypto, actually, we have this superpower where we can kind of borrow from the future and provide contributors token incentives.
Yeah.
And that is something we're actively exploring, where we provide developers token incentives, and that's how we bootstrap this massive developer community without like going through a lot of like iterations. And on day one, let's say we have 100 people. On day two, we have 1,000 people. On day three, we have 10,000. Like it keeps compounding. And that's why one of the reasons, like even though I personally am from machine learning background, traditional, and most of my team as well, we decided to build in the Web3 ecosystem because this superpower of token incentives where you can kind of borrow from the future, and if it's kind of a two-sided marketplace, even you kind of bring one side and gather them before the other side comes, right? And I think this is one of the best ways to do so.
I agree. I mean, I think it makes total sense, and it's taking, we've seen it work with DePIN, right? With decentralized physical infrastructure to bootstrap the compute resources, the physical hardware. In this case, you need people who are contributing to these models, training them, making new parameters, improving them, and that's kind of how they mine, for lack of a better word. And you have the way to track it. You have the way to track it,
Yeah,
like
verifiably tamper-proof way, and that's where cryptography comes in.
So now you can get the flywheel going. And I mean, look, I was an early investor in a Cash, and they're like a decentralized cloud, right? And
Yeah, we know that. We are actually starting to integrate their platform to our solution.
amazing. Yeah, Greg Asuri is a open source maxi. I know you guys have talked. I'm a huge fan, and their economic model for attracting supply initially worked really, really well. And they got a massive amount of supply. And it's been a part of their success. So
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, Greg and I have chatted multiple times, and he seems like one of the real builders who are building for the longer term, for sure.
So like let's back up a little bit because we kind of jumped right in, but like the singularity, what is the singularity in general terms and then in the context of AI?
I actually do not know what does the singularity mean in general terms, but I can tell you from the context of AI. Singularity means when AI systems will largely be better than human intelligence. So if we find an AI system which is better than any human in the world in certain topics, or maybe in general topics as well, that's singularity from the perspective of AI. And a couple weeks ago, Sam Altman made a tweet on X, and it got a lot of attention. And the tweet said that close to singularity, but not sure on which side. So he's actually, what he meant is like
We
internally
might be on the other side.
might be on the other side.
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
So I did a quick search on ChatGPT because I knew it was broader than AI, but typically people use the singularity term in a to specifically refer to AI, but it does have a more generally speaking, from a technology perspective, the singularity is where we reach a point as humanity where technology is improving and growing in a accelerated, uncontrollable fashion. And this is actually something that Mark Zuckerberg brought up, is that and I think it's a huge reason. Like, a lot of people think if you should close source software, right? Because you're protecting it. But the
Mhm.
reality is it's just going to happen. Like, someone's going to build this, not just you, right? And this is
Yeah.
like when people try to regulate technology, for example. If you
Mhm.
try to stifle the AI industry in the United States and control it and prevent it from flourishing, someone else is going to build it. It's going to happen. AGI is coming. Artificial superintelligence is coming. There is no stopping it. And maybe that's what Sam is talking about, right? Like,
Mhm.
maybe that's why he thinks we're already there, is because the momentum's already like, the cat's kind of out of the bag. It's not necessarily just a technology thing. It's like a social thing as well, where
Yeah.
where humanity has decided this is going to happen, and there's enough people out there. And this is the thing that I'm excited about for monetizable open source AI, but just to, like, hammer it home,
Mhm.
I think once you get the flywheel going, it might accelerate faster than all these other closed source versions. It might not, but
Exactly.
maybe, like, what if? I mean, we should find out. We should find out if we can get
Exactly.
there
That's the
faster.
only way to figure out. Like,
Yeah.
it's just arm the rebels, all these open
Yeah.
source developers,
I love
with
it.
incentives, and bring that in the actual a robust system where they can cryptographically monetize their contributions. And all of a sudden, we'll know what can
I'm
happen.
the
The
rebels. Let's
sky,
go.
not the sky, the Andromeda galaxy is the limit, which is the next
Yeah.
galaxy to ours. Um, but I think that's how it will bootstrap. It's not going to live at some database somewhere or at some data center somewhere owned by Meta. It's going to be living in a peer to peer infrastructure and owned by thousands of developers. And that's the goal we're working towards as well.
So let's talk about some of the philosophical conundrums, because there are many. Like, okay, we've got a sentient super AI, super intelligent
Mhm.
AI now living on a decentralized network, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, we already saw ChatGPT, like, in one of its stress tests. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard about it. Like, that it tried to code it, like, write itself, like, rewrite its software to prevent something bad from happening to it.
Mhm.
In a test where it was told to do something that was in its interest. I can't remember exactly what it is, but
Okay.
what are the like? How do you prevent that kind of crazy thing from happening? Like, I mean, Skynet, Terminator style, like, super
Mhm.
intelligence living on a decentralized infrastructure that can't be, that's censorship resistant. Like, no one has the key to just, like, turn that off. What's like, how do we deal with that conversation?
So the opinion to that I have is definitely subjective. But also, I would like to say, like, there's a parallel to kind of this we see in discussions about gun control, right? Like, people are like, we should have regulations around gun. People shouldn't be allowed to have guns. But then somehow the other party says, like, the bad people have the guns anyway. If we just stop the good people from having it, then there's like who are gonna, do the equilibrium. I kind of see there's kind of some similarity in there. Like, there's one party that is saying that we will just regulate AI and nobody will get access to the ASI and whatnot. But it's gonna happen either way. It's gonna be built by some random kid, 12-year-old kid somewhere, right? And then they have access to it. And what if they decide to not do something great for humanity, right? Then how are we gonna counteract with it? So I guess any problem that gets introduced by technology, for me, I think the solution is to have more technology, not to have less technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think you get into a similar debate. I actually don't think the gun debate is necessarily like the closest analogy. The analogy I would draw is around censorship, right?
Mhm.
Like in content moderation.
Yeah.
That is and we've seen a big correction in that towards less censorship, even in the
Mhm.
last like week, again, from Mark Zuckerberg. Where he admitted to censoring a large swath of people on the internet because he was trying to cooperate with the government. Um, and 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 it's a really really slippery slope. But there's always this question of like, hey, we need to protect people from this content. Hey, we need to protect people from this AI. We
Mhm.
should regulate that thing. But you don't really end up protecting them from anything. At the end of the day, like the content still reaches them somehow.
Mhm.
And this goes back to the singularity, right? Like you literally just can't stop it from happening. And
Exactly.
so the only thing you can do is just arm yourself with more tools and knowledge as an individual.
Mhm.
Which is again why open source is so important, right? Because it's the only way individuals will be able to have that resource in their control. Otherwise, it's in a some dystopian future, right? Like, and let's talk
Totally
about that.
agree.
Like, what does this dystopian future look like? Let's say that we fail, okay? We
Mhm.
don't make ASI in a decentralized context, with Bagel. Um, what's like the Orwellian future of like companies controlling? Like, there's 3 companies that have ASI at some point. It's Meta,
Yeah.
X, and OpenAI, and maybe like Google and Microsoft. What happens?
Mhm. I mean, there are so many possibilities. Hard to get into that, but one thing I saw recently, I read somewhere, like one probability is that we won't have any labor shortage in the society. It's gonna be all robots doing everything, right? And we won't have anything to do because the ASI is doing everything. But at the same time, it has ever growing hunger for more information so that it can train itself on. So it basically tells all the human, you know what? Go travel the stars, go to other galaxies, go to other planets, go and gather information from there and feed it back to me. And if you do that, then I will give you the resources to survive, like food and whatnot, right? And if you do not do that, then you are basically left alone. The whole society, which is controlled by ASI, just singles you out and you are out of the society, and maybe you don't even survive. Who knows? So to be part of the society, you have to listen whatever the ASI says. You take risks, you go in, I don't know, like deep oceans or volcano or out of the planet and gather more data and feed it to the AI system, and then it gives you some resources which you can use to survive.
All right. So really quickly, number one, that's terrifying. Um,
Yeah.
just to wrap that up, I don't think that's going to be what happens. I think the open source community will succeed. There's like no stopping that. And humans will find a way. Even if we're late to the game, right? We'll find a way. But
We will find a way. We will augment ourselves. We are not going to be able to compete with the AI without any other AI assisting us. But how do we make sure they're like the good version of the AI is assisting us to kind of combat the bad version, which is also inevitable. If we have thousands of AI systems, a couple of them are going to be bad. That's just statistics.
mhm.
How
Yeah,
can we
and there's
make
gonna
sure
be
that
evil
we have
people
the
who
good
wanna make
ones?
that, that's just the world, that's the reality of the world,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
can't
if
prevent.
you have 1 million people, there's one guy out of that 1 million people, like who is the worst person among that 1 million, and that's
Yeah.
like very bad person, like one in a million evil. is a very bad thing. Same with AI. If we have millions of AI, one of them will be made by someone, let's say 1 in a million evil person, and that's going to be so bad, right? And that's enough.
So we're gonna make a open source monetizable artificial superintelligence with the open source community. What are some research areas that Bagel is contributing to right now around superintelligence? And when or how can the open source community get involved? Like, are you guys doing any kind of events soon? Um, how can
Mm.
people start contributing and get a part? Like, maybe this incentive program. Like, maybe you don't have the details out yet, but like, where should they go to find out about that? That kind of thing.
Just find us on Twitter. It's x.com/bagel So find us there. Like we have some things in plan. We are gonna open up some fundamental research in like next week, but by the time this comes out, that will be open already. So just go to our Twitter, and you will see all the recent updates and historical updates about our research, about our events, about our developer programs, and all of those things.
Well, I'm just excited to be a fly in the wall. I think that there's a real rallying cry here for the community that people can get behind. Like they really should know it's important. And
Appreciate it.
I think a lot of developers do believe in that. And
Appreciate it. And
it-
we are seeing the inflection point at the moment. We opened up our platform, which is called the Bakery, for public, like about a week ago, and we have had 2,000% growth in
geez,
the week in terms of user number, and also we were trending on Product Hunt when it
nice.
launched, on like in the top 10 in the whole world,
Oh,
right?
that's
So
cool.
like the thing is that for us, we always knew that this. I always knew this was important, and we built the first version of the product. Granted, it's not perfect. Like no product is perfect. It can always be better. But we put it out to the world and see how much utility developers can get out of it, and they are excited about it, and that makes us excited and gives us the fuel to go on.
Awesome. Well, I think the future is bright, and there's obviously a ton of people interested in contributing here and taking advantage of monetizable open source AI.
Hmm.
Thanks for coming on the show or hosting with me today. I think in future episodes, if you're listening, we're going to start bringing on some more guests to talk with Bidon and I around like the research that they're doing and various topics related to open source AI. Anything you want to wrap up with? Any message to the community or anything you want to say as a final note?
Monetizable open source AI is a generational movement. It's not just some product that we're building or some Web3 protocol that we're building, it's a movement. Like, this is the only way we have a chance of having this God level AI built in the open, and for all the developers to contribute and all the humanity to benefit from it. So, join us, find us on Twitter, and we will work together in however way we see it's possible.
We'll wrap on that. You heard it here first. Join us. All right. Thanks, Bidon.
Thanks.